Election day, and in order to keep my mind off the election, I decided to go ahead and build a computer. There's the case. Let's get started. Alright, for this election day build, here are all the parts that I have available. I'm going to go ahead and go over everything real fast, starting with the motherboard. This is a MSI B150 gaming motherboard, and I'm pairing this with a Intel i5-6400 processor. I've used this in many different builds before in the past, and I've really enjoyed the results I've had with it before. For RAM, I'm going to be using this crucial Basilisk RAM, 16GB kit that I got for about $40 locally. So I'm going to be using this RAM in this build. Of course, I have my drives here, my solid-state drive and hard drive. Power supply is a Thermaltake Smart BX1 550. This is the 80+ bronze power supply with the non-modular version, so all the little cables are right here. But I already tested it. It works perfectly fine, and this is going to have more than enough power to power this processor and my graphics card, which is going to be a XFX RX 5500, which is about the same performance as a RX 580, but it's much more energy efficient on the 7nm processor, and it should pair fairly well with this combination that I'm doing right here. Now, to cool this motherboard, I'm going to be using this Cooler Master Hyper 212 Black Edition. Very basic fan cooler combination. I've used it many times before. Very satisfied. No frills, gets the job done. That's all that matters. For a case, I'm going to be using this Corsair Carbide case, Carbide, whatever it is, case. I picked it locally for about $30. It has a blue LED fan in the front. It should barely fit the motherboard in here with the power supply on the bottom. And I have another 120mm fan I will be tossing in here to complete the build. So I'll have one fan in the front and one fan in the back for the exhaust. So not much, but you don't need a whole lot with this combination of parts. And I'm real eager to go ahead and get this machine together and run some benchmarks. So let's go ahead and get the build started. So it's been a couple of weeks since I first started this build, and I think I'm finally going to finish it. So let me go ahead and show you what parts I've gotten in that will allow me to finish this build. Okay, so the two parts that I needed for this build in order to complete it was the CPU and a graphics card. So the replacement processor I already got in. This is an i5-6400, the exact same as the previous one, but this one works. I've already tested it. So this is going to pair with my new graphics card that I'm going to be using. It's a Radeon RX 570. The graphics card that I was going to use ended up going to a different computer because I had to wait so long to complete this one. So this is a good stand-in graphics card. So performance wise, this is pretty close to the RX 5500 XT that I was going to use before. So I got this card locally for about $100, and as you can see, it's in pretty good condition. This is going to pair very nice with the processor. So let me go ahead and get this processor and the graphics card installed into the case. As you can see, it's ready for the processor right there. And let's get this build finished. So I finally got this computer working. It's been a long couple of weeks. I initially tried to get this computer built about 2 weeks ago during the election, but I wasn't able to because of some problems that came up with the machine. First and foremost was the processor. The i5-6400 I originally have just wasn't working. For whatever reason, it just would not boot into Windows. I could get into the BIOS, but that was about it. It might have been something wrong with the memory controller on board the chip, or something with the frequency when it boosts up into the operating system. I don't know, but regardless, the chip that I purchased originally didn't work. So that was a bit of a bummer. So I went out and I eventually sold that chip for parts, and then I sold a few other items, and I eventually scraped up enough money to buy another i5-6400, which is currently in this machine, so it obviously works. The other issue I had was the graphics card. The card I was originally going to use was the RX 5500 XT. I ended up using that card in another build because I wanted to move my inventory. So I went ahead and purchased another card, which was the RX 570 4GB version. Performance wise, it's pretty comparable to what I had before. But when I went ahead and installed it, I was having issues. For some reason, the card was not showing up in the device manager. It shows some kind of error in running the card. And whenever I booted up either a game or a benchmark, it would crash. I went ahead and investigated the card a bit by looking up the specs in GPU-Z. And the BIOS that was in the card was newer than the BIOS that was available online. So that was a little questionable. The BIOS wasn't a mining BIOS as far as I could tell, because typically it would say mining in the actual BIOS description. But I went ahead and decided and reflashed the BIOS that was available online onto this card, and it ended up working. I was still a little paranoid, wondering whether this card was ever mined on, so I went ahead and opened it up and looked inside. Inside, the card looked basically brand new. The thermal paste application looked like it had just come off the factory floor. It was still applied on evenly and looked really good. I went ahead and replaced the thermal paste out of an abundance of caution, but other than that, it ended up working very well. I plan on selling this computer for about $550 to $600. With the holiday season coming up, it should be able to move pretty quickly. If you liked this video, go ahead and leave a like and comment below. If you didn't like this video, well, still leave a like and comment below and just tell me what I did wrong. Until next time.